Welcome everybody to the weekly game plan. We're going to break down the markets. We're going to go over some trade ideas. We have a big week ahead of us. On Wednesday, we have the GDP report. We've also got like jobless claims and other news events later in the week. It's going to be a super busy week. And so basically what we want to do is just find the highest probability setups. SPY, S&P 500, finishing Friday up 0.72%. We're kind of breaking out of this little downtrend line. We did get above the Trump pump high. So if we can turn 548 SPY into support, that would be bullish, and SPY could potentially test something like 565. I don't expect the market really to get much higher than 565 this week. In fact, I'm thinking of going short ahead of the GDP report on Wednesday, as it could potentially be bearish. Time will tell, though. I need to see how the price action is and what's going on at that point in time. Okay, so SPY, neutral/bullish in the short term, but news events can completely change that. You know, if SPY starts to break underneath 510, we could be retesting the lows and potentially even going lower later into the year. If SPY can really hold above like 550, we've got a chance to test the 200-day moving average at about 573, okay? I may go short SPX to potentially, capture my trade thesis, but IWM, the Russell 2000, has been a lot weaker and a lot more bearish. So I might consider some puts and put debit spreads on IWM. Otherwise, you can trade RUT, and this is the Russell 2000 index. And remember, indexes have tax advantages to trading them. A portion of the gains are treated as long-term capital gains, which is a more favorable tax rate, and a portion of the gains that you receive from these trades will still be short-term capital gains. But maybe just layering in some like put debit spreads. You know, the more time you give yourself, the better, but it's not going to move that more volatilely. As in, it'll be less volatile the longer the duration that you go on the put debit spreads. It'll be more volatile the shorter the duration. Okay. If we take a look at just what's going on in the futures markets right now, /ES is down 0.33%. So nothing too crazy right there. Most stocks are going to be gapping down if this futures market holds to the downside. Looking at the S&P 500, I'm looking at short-term support at about 540. So tomorrow, if the market sells off, like 1.67%, I could look at SPX bullish put credit spreads. And we've actually been on a really good run trading SPX credit spreads. And I've been really enjoying this type of trading style. Thursday, we sold some SPX bull put credit spreads as we started to confirm the trend, the higher low pivot. I was basically saying Friday, I think you're going to close above 53.50. And of course, it was over 3% higher from that level. So I might look at doing something similar to that. Maybe I'll sell something like 53.10 bullish put credit spreads going into Tuesday. And that can be a potential trade idea. Okay. So just looking at some other markets, you can take a look at natural gas. That's gapping up. We are long on natural gas, so that's going to be very beneficial. I'm not going to overstay my welcome on the natural gas long, but I'd expect this to potentially get maybe another 8 to 10% higher over the next coming weeks and months. If we take a look at gold, gold is gapping up right now just a little bit. So I am bullish gold. I'm bullish on silver. Silver is gapping down just a little bit in the futures market, but that's totally cool. Longer term, I'm looking at this silver kind of high base type of deal where we got higher lows. We got this flat top on SLV at 3160. Set some price alerts there and you can grab some leap call options. And I think there's a very good chance that those can pay out pretty well. If we take a look at the dollar, that's related to our precious metals over here. The dollar gapping up slightly right now. Just kind of consolidating a bit. So if the dollar could get overbought and maybe start to reject, that could give some more entries for long gold, long silver. Okay, so I'm looking at a location maybe near like DXY, like 102. And that's also going to be correlated with our bonds, the TLT, the 20-year Treasury bond ETF. If TLT takes out 85, that would be super bearish for the market. Right now, though, the ZB/ZB is the ultra bond futures. You can see that those are gapping up. So TLT is going to gap up with this. If this could get a little bit more overbought, maybe something near the 200-day moving average, 118 area and starts to reject, that could be a potential trade idea where you buy TLT puts. And that's a simple trade idea. Or otherwise, you could just buy TBT calls, or you could buy TBT shares. Interest rates, no breakout really just yet. But if interest rates really start to break out, that can signal higher inflation. And during higher inflation times, stocks actually historically tend to perform well during inflationary times. The question just becomes, is this going to be a stagflationary time where there's slow growth and high unemployment? Because then the stocks may not rally and the inflation might, remain persistent. But fixed income tends to underperform when inflation is high because they're just going to keep paying those same coupon rates, dividend rates, or interest rates. So let's get into some trade ideas, and then we can break down the markets as we go through some of these trade ideas. Another bearish trade idea is Qualcomm, QCOM. This could be ahead of earnings or after earnings, but I'm going to do an AI analysis on this. If SPY gets to like 565, that pretty much correlates with Qualcomm like 154. So a rejection of 154 could be a potential entry for puts. But again, that has earnings, so keep an eye on that. In terms of stocks that have relative strength, you can take a look at Spotify, Spot, again, unaffected by the tariffs. This is a beautiful chart. Spotify kind of have some double bottom action going here. You got a little flag break right here. This is not perfect. This is a false breakout that turned into a bull. But Spotify, just look for relative strength longs. Maybe I could do like a bullish weighted iron condor. Again, Spotify has earnings on April 29th. Okay. One stock that may be considered for the wheel, again, I'm weary about the GDP report, is RKLB, Rocket Lab. Again, if it can really hold above like 23 and turn it into support, the option premiums are really good on this. I just don't trust the stock. It's a risk-on stock, and we're kind of in a risk-off environment until further notice. There's lots of talks about like what the Zwig thrust indicator being 100% accurate and leads to strong bull markets, 16 to 20% rallies. So, it's I don't want to discount the potential for SPY all-time highs, but it's very unlikely with all this gunk, all this resistance, the moving averages. There's a lot of technical damage done to the charts. So I need to see a lot more things happening. I need to see the IWM start to lead before getting super bullish. I want to see SMH, semiconductors, start to lead before getting super bullish. It has a start with this downtrend line break. Can it hold the downtrend line as support and continue higher? Or is it just going to resume the downtrend? We can take a look at the transports. That's another leading indicator, IYT. This isn't leading. This is being a shitter. It's down 2.10%. Transports are really, really struggling. Transports, IYT is a short underneath 5750. Bitcoin's a leading indicator, /BTC. It's selling off just a little bit. We did run into resistance at 95.50K. We talked about that during this breakout on Bitcoin. I was just saying, Bitcoin has about another 5% upside, and it got a little bit more. It got up to like 6.6% upside. But since then, it's down almost 3%. So Bitcoin, I just remain neutral on that. It does have relative strength for now. Let's see how it holds prior breakout areas. Okay. So that's around 90K Bitcoin and 85K Bitcoin. If it can hold that as support, Bitcoin's bullish. Bitcoin is super bearish underneath like 76K to 75K. And that, just watch the 200-day moving average as a barometer for Bitcoin. Next up is CVX. Potential double bottom right here. We'll see if this can get going. There's a breakout over 140. Let's check on oil prices /CL. Gapping up just a little bit. If oil could get overbought, I'd like to short it. I might even take a short on oil ahead of the GDP report, but crude oil has a lot of resistance at $69 a barrel. So if it rejects from there, you can trade USO puts. You can buy USO puts. You can buy SCO shares long. In that case, if oil rejects, SCO would be around like 18 area. And so if you can dip buy at 18, maybe you can sell it for a 10% profit if it bounces from that level. I wouldn't overstay my welcome on something like SCO and these triple levered longs. There's been a lot of decay recently with a lot of these triple levered ETFs. A relative strength long idea is CHTR. CHTR. Again, we have a shock gap right here. So kind of in this cluster right here, earnings, gap and go to the upside. I love trading a stock after the earnings, after it's kind of made its decision, because look, this whole balance range, lots of buyers and sellers transacted orders here. And then when you gap above all of that, you get above the 200-day moving average. That looks bullish. You know, there's going to be some gunk up here from 385 to like 390, but maybe a pullback to the 200-day moving average could be a support. So here's a potential trade idea. You know, buy it as it starts to curl right over here at around like 350. Stop could be something like 325. If you want to give it more space, maybe go like 315. And then see if you can't take profit towards the supply zone, or go for a little bit more, maybe go for like 400 to 410. So that's a potential trade idea on CHTR. Those are the main trade setups that I'm watching. Of course, Palantir did really, really well. I'm not going to look for longs on this. We talked about the dip buy at 89. I didn't take the dip buy at 89. I day traded some calls over 100, and I did note the price target was 107. I just scalped those pretty quickly. Yeah, right over here, breakout, quick take profit, but it did go on a nice trend. We had a nice win on run cash secured puts, and then also run long with covered call. Run starting to break out of this base. The volume's not very good though, but run fair value is $10 per share. You can kind of see the solar sector kind of coming back to life, but still in a really icky downtrend. We can check out FSLR. There's no trade setup on this, but it's just something to note. You know, kind of breaking out of that range. Looks similar to run. First Solar reports earnings on April 29th. Related to First Solar is Enphase, EMPH. New downtrend. We broke this down on the Victory Talk podcast, and some guys are asking, hey, Greg, should I buy Enphase? And I'm like, I don't want to tell you what to buy or sell. And I'll restate that for this video. I'm not telling you what to buy or what to sell. I don't know your financial situation. But Enphase is in a strong downtrend. I remember buying shares at 10 and selling them at 90. This is just an ugly chart. This kind of looks like it's going to zero. One big trade that we had last year, this is just in the Trade Ideas channel. It wasn't an alerted trade, but it kind of basically was. We bought Leap puts on SEDG. You know, down when it was at 67, and boom, take profits at like 29. If you can catch a big bearish trend like this, it's like catching a big home run winner stock. If you can find the sectors and stocks that are going to get clapped over a period of time. Netflix was another relative strength long that we talked about. Netflix was a big bull break over 950. I just bought at 950, sold at 990. Should have held, but you know, that's earnings. I didn't want to hold through. Netflix is a bit overbought, but I like dip buys on Netflix near 1,000. Just for a short-term trade, nothing crazy. Maybe I'd consider an investment. It depends, but look for a dip buy on Netflix near $1,000 per share. Okay. A healthcare stock to keep an eye on is ECH, Encompass Health. Look at that nice breakout. Beautiful breakout, shock gap. You do have a bit of an RSI or money flow divergence. Okay. So that's taking an RSI and multiplying it by volume. But if it could maybe break that trend, this could continue higher. So ECH, long over 114.38. Stop underneath 109. See if that can't continue higher and break up. And those are the main setups. I've got other trade ideas posted. I like SPX put debit spreads later on Tuesday. And again, I'm going to keep this pretty short because I have a big Series 65 exam on Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. There's a lot of studying I still need to do. I mean, I just want to wrap things up and ensure that I have victory. But this is a good time to post your stocks. I'm going to start breaking down what you guys got. So let's first check out Berkshire, BRK/B. Yeah, Berkshire. Hanging out near the highs. I mean, looks like a long over all-time highs, 539. The stop loss gets tricky. You could use any one of these wicks as kind of like a stop area. Berkshire long over 539, stop 520. Otherwise, I just consider buying Berkshire after a big market correction. Near the 200-day can be an okay location. Look how it respects the 200-day. Gets close, bounces. Gets close, bounces. Touches it, bounces. Oh, almost touches it. Touches it to the penny, rips. So, you know, maybe it does something like this. Maybe it breaks out. The moving average starts to catch up. It's a good location, okay? I like Berkshire for relative strength. The trade setup gets tricky on this. Berkshire is kind of like an investing stock. It's not really a stock you trade. I mean, sure, you can take some call debit spreads or bullish put credit spreads, but it's kind of just a stock you kind of buy and hold, buy and accumulate, versus stocks like PLTR and Tesla. You can just go in and out. Sure, you can invest in these, but it's like, yeah, you know, I'd rather just pull my piece of the move. So a good question from Henry is the 98 to 100 level for PLTR good dip buy for an investment? For an investment, I need to be super picky. Investing PLTR, I'd like 45. I'm not saying it's going to get there. That would have to drop a lot. You know, that'd have to drop 60%. Be careful when a chart goes parabolic like this. Sometimes it can retrace all of the move, although it can signify a strong power uptrend. For an investment, I think the only way to really get involved with PLTR is just dollar cost average. You know, do $10 a week, $100 a week, $1,000 a week, whatever your budget is, and just incrementally buy a little bit every week. Just because, you know, if you go based off traditional metrics, PLTR is overvalued. Let's take a look at what Morningstar has to say about PLTR. So that's pulling up right now. Fair value is $90 per share. So if you could get a good discount underneath 90, then you're building yourself a margin of profit, you know? But yeah, read these analyst reports. Well, there you go. If you have a feeling they're going to crush earnings, take the risk, you know? Don't let me stop you from taking risks if you want to, but just know that the risks versus reward. I personally like to buy stocks well beneath fair value and then sell them as they get close to the fair value and just rinse and repeat. Otherwise, I'm just going to trade it like momentum style. But hey, they crushed the last earnings report. Who's to say that they can't this earnings report? I know Brandon Carter and I were trading ahead of this earnings report, and Brandon Carter made a couple grand off of just a couple $100 off of this move. We're using AI earnings predictions, and it's been decently accurate. AI predicted Google to be neutral/bullish. Google gapping up, neutral/bullish. And we did that earlier in the week. Google rallied like 7% from that. It said Tesla neutral/bearish, and it was technically correct because Tesla had one of its worst earnings reports. I was actually able to close the Iron Condor for a quick $60 profit the very next day. So I was able to make some money off of that. But Tesla did end up going bull later in the week, kind of just like a short squeeze. Friday, man, Friday was a day for 0 DTE calls on Tesla. Obviously, this is in hindsight, but make a high, low, higher high, higher low, higher high, bull break, tiny increase in volume, rips. Rallies, consolidates, rallies, consolidate, rally, pullback, rally, rally, higher lows, higher highs, consolidate, rally, higher lows, higher highs, digs a little bit deeper, and then it puts in a lower high, really mirroring the SPY. Tesla's a fascinating stock. Fascinating price chart. Watch out for Tesla coming up on the 200-day moving average as resistance. Uber has a little bit of relative strength. Uber, there's a breakout over 80.60. Again, Uber's a bit overvalued, but it's a good business model. You know, you technically don't need a car anymore. And if you don't use Ubers often, it may be cheaper to just Uber everywhere. And you don't have to drive. You don't have to worry about gas, car maintenance, liability for crashes. Something to think about. That's not suitable for everybody, though, of course. Yeah, just looking through some of these charts. My big takeaway is focus on stocks that are above the 200-day moving average for longs and beneath the 200-day moving average for shorts. And then within that selection criteria, then you can, use your trade setups. You can find your trade setups. Short overbought rejections within the downtrend. Buy oversold bounces within an uptrend. And yeah, I think we'll be in tip-top shape moving forward. I think the trades look good. I'm happy with all my positions. Let's crush it this week. I'm going to get back to studying, you guys. Have a fantastic week. I'll be live trading tomorrow morning. The live sessions will be a little bit shorter this week, and I will not be live on Thursday. Okay? Live sessions will be shorter this week. I won't be live on Thursday. Keep an eye out for SPX trades, low management trades, and then starting Friday, we'll pick up with higher management trades, day trades, higher position sizes, stuff like that. Okay? Take care, you guys. Yes, let's ace that exam. Let's crush it. Nothing but victory over here. Take care, you guys. Peace out.